It's 12:15 in the morning and you're asleep. The screen in a bunker outside Moscow lights up red. It says 5 American missiles are in the air, and the people in that room have roughly 15 minutes to decide whether the world ends tonight. You don't know any of this, you never will, because a man you've never heard of is about to decide the machine is lying. His name was Stanislav Petrov. The date was September 26, 1983. The system was called OKO, and it had been built to do exactly one thing: see a nuclear attack coming before it arrived. That night it saw one. It was wrong. Sunlight was glancing off high-altitude clouds at an unusual angle, and the satellite read that glare as rocket exhaust. Petrov's job was to report what the screen told him. He reported a malfunction instead. So ask yourself what he had that the machine didn't. Not more information, he had less. What he had was a hunch that a real American first strike wouldn't be 5 missiles, it would be hundreds. The number on the screen was too small to be the end of the world, and that instinct, unmeasurable and impossible to put in a database, is a large part of why you woke up the next morning. Now picture that same night with nobody in the chair. That is the question underneath everything you're about to hear, not whether machines will fight our wars. They already do parts of them. The question is what happens when the decision itself moves out of a human head and into a system that cannot be argued with. Start with what already exists, because it's further along than most people assume. Scharre spent years in the office of the Secretary of Defense working on exactly this problem, after serving as an Army Ranger. In his book Army of None, he lays out a distinction that clarifies almost everything. There are 3 positions a human can occupy: in the loop where a person approves every shot, on the loop where the machine acts and the person can override it, and out of the loop where the machine acts and nobody can stop it in time. Most of the systems you've heard of are not fully autonomous. Most of them are not fully human either. The Aegis combat system on a U.S. Navy destroyer can track and engage targets faster than a crew could ever manage manually. Israel's Harop loitering munition can circle for hours, hunt for a radar signal, and dive into it. In 2021, a United Nations panel reported that a Turkish-made Cargo 2 drone may have engaged targets in Libya without a human operator directing the strike. So where exactly is the line, and who noticed when we crossed it? Here's the argument for handing more of this over, and it's stronger than critics usually admit. Speed. A hypersonic missile crosses in minutes. A drone swarm coordinates in milliseconds. A cyber intrusion propagates faster than any human can read the alert. If your adversary's system decides in 1 second and yours takes 30, you don't have a defense, you have a delay. There's a second argument that gets less attention: machines don't panic. They don't get tired at hour 19 of a shift. They don't shoot because they're terrified or because a friend died yesterday. A significant share of civilian deaths in war come from fear, exhaustion, and confusion, and a machine has none of those. That case is real, so why does almost every researcher who studies this closely end up worried? Because of what happened on July 3, 1988. The USS Vincennes, equipped with Aegis, was in the Strait of Hormuz. A civilian airliner, Iran Air Flight 655, took off on a scheduled route. The crew read the data on their screens and concluded they were looking at an Iranian F-14 descending toward them. They fired. 290 people died, including 66 children. The system had not malfunctioned. The altitude data available was accurate. The aircraft was climbing, not diving. Under enormous stress in a few compressed minutes, human beings looked at correct information and saw the thing they were braced to see. Now hold that thought, because the failure runs in both directions. Linda Skitka and Kathleen Mosier have spent careers studying something called automation bias. The finding is uncomfortable. When people are given an automated system they believe is reliable, they don't just rely on it. They stop independently checking it. They miss errors they would have caught working alone, and they will sometimes follow a computer's recommendation over the evidence directly in front of their own eyes. Missy Cummings, one of the Navy's first female fighter pilots and now an academic studying human-automation interaction, has spent years documenting the same pattern in cockpits and control rooms. The better the automation performs, the less the human questions it. Competence breeds complacency. Do you see the trap closing? In 2003, during the invasion of Iraq, Patriot missile batteries shot down a British Tornado and an American FA-18. 3 aircrew were killed. A subsequent Army Science Board review described operators working in a posture of trusting the system, in a fast-moving environment where the machine's classification was effectively accepted as fact. Not because they were careless, because that's what happens to human attention when a machine is usually right. So put those two failures side by side. Humans under stress can misread good data. Humans supervising machines gradually stop reading the data at all. If you're on the loop rather than in it and you have 4 seconds and no independent information, your override authority is a formality. What is a human veto worth if the human has no basis to exercise it? Stuart Russell, the Berkeley computer scientist who co-wrote one of the standard textbooks in artificial intelligence, has spent the last decade arguing that this is the moment to decide, not later. He helped produce a short film called Slaughterbots, showing swarms of small autonomous drones selecting targets by face. His concern is not that the machines become hostile, it's that they become cheap and scalable and available to anyone. That's the part that separates this from every previous weapons revolution. A tank requires a factory, a nuclear program requires a state, a supply chain, and decades. Autonomous targeting is software copies. But the deepest problem isn't any single weapon. It's what happens when two of these systems meet each other. You've seen a preview of it, and it had nothing to do with the military. On May 6, 2010, the U.S. stock market lost roughly $1 trillion in value in about half an hour, then recovered most of it. Nobody decided to do that. Automated trading systems, each behaving rationally on its own terms, reacted to one another faster than any person could intervene. It's now called the flash crash. Now run that same dynamic where the outputs aren't trades. Two rival defense systems, each tuned to respond to the other, each optimized for speed, each unable to ask a single question that Petrov asked. Is this real? An escalation could complete itself before either government's leadership was even notified. Not because either side chose war, because neither side's machine was built to hesitate. And there's the accountability question nobody has answered. If an autonomous system strikes a wedding convoy, who is responsible? The commander who deployed it, the engineer who wrote the targeting model, the contractor who supplied the training data. Under the laws of armed conflict, responsibility has to land somewhere specific. Diffuse it across a supply chain and it evaporates. The United States Department of Defense does have a written policy on this, Directive 3000.09, first issued in 2012 and updated in 2023. It requires that weapon systems allow commanders and operators to exercise appropriate levels of human judgment over the use of force. Read that phrase carefully. Appropriate is doing enormous work in that sentence, and it is not defined the same way by every country. At the United Nations, discussions on lethal autonomous weapons have been running since 2014. Dozens of countries have called for binding restrictions. The states with the most advanced programs have generally preferred non-binding guidelines. Nothing enforceable has been agreed. So what actually happens next? Probably not a machine seizing command. That's the movie version and it's a distraction. The realistic path is quieter and it's already underway. AI moves into logistics, then intelligence analysis, then target identification, then recommendation. Each step is defensible on its own. Each step compresses the time available to think. And one day the recommendation arrives so fast, with such a strong track record behind it, that pressing approve is the only reasonable thing a human being can do. Nobody hands over control, it just quietly stops being control. Which brings us back to a bunker outside Moscow, and a man staring at a screen that said the world was ending. Petrov wasn't a hero because he had better information. He was a hero because he was allowed to doubt. He had time, authority, and a system that still rooted the final judgment through a person who could be wrong and who knew it. That's the thing worth protecting, not human perfection, human hesitation. It's 12:15 in the morning and you're asleep. Somewhere, a screen is lighting up red. The only question that has ever mattered is whether anyone in that room is still permitted to say no.